Hi everyone, my name is Stasha. I am that Lupus Coach, and I wanted to take time today to introduce myself, tell you my story, because why would you want to listen to somebody if you don't even know the story of how they got here? For me, this started in 2021, January 30th. My entire life changed forever, for the good, and we're not going to call it bad, but definitely different. So, January 30th, I was at home. I was in the morning and I wasn't feeling so great. I was currently pregnant with my first daughter, Ryder. I was 30 weeks pregnant and I just felt really nauseous, didn't feel good. So I asked my husband, I said, "Can you give me the trash can before you leave for work? I just don't feel good." So he brings me the trash can and he's standing 3 feet in front of me and says, "Here, take the trash can, take it." And I said, "I can't see you. Where are you?" And he said, "I'm right in front of you." And that is the last part of that day that I remember. But from what I was told, I had gone into a seizure. I then was arguing with the paramedics when they got there, saying that I didn't have a seizure. That's not what was happening. I ended up having two more, one on the way to the hospital, and then I believe one when I arrived in the emergency room. Immediately was taken up to labor and delivery, and they were saying, emergency C-section, we have to get this baby out. This is the only way we can fix this. My blood pressure was through the roof, somewhere around stroke range. So for those of you who don't know that, it was like 210 over 100 and something. Super crazy. So my daughter was delivered. She was in NICU, and I came to that evening, probably around 6 p.m., and I was told I have a daughter and she's okay and I'm going to be okay, even though my body decided to fight me on all accounts. I was in it's preeclampsia, and 3% of people that have preeclampsia end up with seizures. So, yay me. So, had seizures, and I also went into HELP syndrome, which is where essentially your liver and your kidneys decide that they don't want to work. So, those are being shut down as well. So, stayed in the hospital. My daughter did great, no problem. She came home after about a month, and when she did come home, she only weighed just over 5 pounds. So you wouldn't think that would be hard for me to take care of something like that. So I felt really weak. I was having a hard time holding her. I was having a hard time taking the lids off the bottles. I would sit on the couch for, 30 minutes to an hour and then go to stand up, and I felt like I was going to break my legs if I pushed on them, and just thought, gosh, my body is just recovering from this traumatic event. That's got to be it. So all of my checkups were great, no issues with my C-section. Everything healed up fine, and I went back to work. I was working night shift at the hospital that I delivered at, and I couldn't open pills for patients. I couldn't get down on the floor to empty a catheter bag. I was struggling with lifting patients in bed, rolling them, helping to get them changed, and just be present for my patients. And so I started getting really scared. I didn't know what was going on. And so I would talk to my doctors about it, and they're like, "Well, you sound just tired. Your labs look fine. Maybe we'll run some tests for you to have a clot, maybe, because your D-dimer, which is a clot marker, especially having major abdominal surgery, which would be the C-section." They're like, it's a possibility. So I was like, okay, fine. So did it, no clots in my lungs, but I would be super short of breath and just super out of energy. And then the pain started. Unbearable pain. I couldn't sit up straight. I felt like I couldn't take a full breath in. It felt like I was like breathing with glass in my lungs. Like, it was the weirdest thing. And anytime I would go to the ER, they're like, "Your labs are fine, your EKG's fine, whatever." Okay, fine. So then I finally saw a pulmonologist, which is somebody who looks at your lungs, and they did their scan and they were like, "Well, it looks like you have some fluid in your lungs, but it's not enough to drain. It's more risk for us to drain it than it would be to leave it." So that was weird. Why would I have fluid in my lungs? I didn't have like any crazy surgery as of recent. This was like a couple months down the road. So weird. So then I started having this pain in my stomach, like upper abdominal area. And they were like, "Oh, it's your gallbladder. you've got gallstones. Like, let's just take your gallbladder out. Like, that's got to be what's causing all your problems. And I was like, oh, okay. They're like, yeah, it could be leaking like a toxin and you're going to start feeling so much better. So, have my gallbladder out. Felt good for like a week, and it all started and it got worse. And so, again, trips to the emergency room, my heart rate started becoming uncontrolled. I was having AFib, which is atrial fibrillation. If you're not familiar with that, is extremely high rate and erratic heart rhythm. Couldn't get that under control, and then it was under control, and then it wasn't under control, and it just kept going crazy like this. And I was like, I cannot keep doing this. I don't know what's going on. I'm still trying to go to work. I'm calling out. I'm trying to rearrange schedules. Like, it just was horrible. So finally, um, in late June of 2021, I just wasn't feeling good. I had been calling out of work. My husband being so wonderful and trying to help as much as possible, we drove over to my parents, and it was just my mom home at the time. And I got out of the car, and I wasn't even driving. I was so afraid to drive. So I got out of the car and I almost collapsed in their front yard. I could barely stand up. I couldn't breathe. It was so scary, and we were headed to a doctor's appointment. And so my mom was going to watch our daughter, and she immediately was like, "You need to go." So we went to the appointment. I saw a different pulmonologist, and she looked at me and said, "I don't know what's wrong with you, but something is wrong, and you need to get it figured out." And so I said, "But nobody believes me. Everybody is like, it's all in your head. You're a new mom. Go home and get some rest. Like, take some time. Make sure you're sleeping." Like, come on, seriously. If this is how it is postpartum, like, why do people have more than one kid, right? So I was like, this is dumb. So we sat there in her office, and she goes, "I need you to go across the street to the emergency room and say you can't breathe and you have chest pain." And I kind of sat there and like looked at her funny, and I was like, "What?" And she goes, "You need to tell them you have chest pain and you can't breathe." And I was like, "But," and she goes, "Just do it." So we did, and I kind of played it up a little bit, even though it wasn't totally faking it. And I got EKG monitors thrown on me right away. They're checking everything. They're doing ultrasounds of my heart. They're looking at all this stuff, and they're like, "We got nothing for you. We don't know what it is." And I said, very nicely, but very bluntly, like, "I am not leaving here until this is figured out, because I cannot keep living like this." And so I ended up being admitted. And I asked to be put on my unit because I was like, they're going to let me sleep. It's going to be super nice. Like, this will be great. And that worked out. But unfortunately, one of my coworkers, she came in and she goes, "Hey, I hate to tell you, but you're back in AFib. We have to get you to a different unit." I said, "Oh, fine." So got me up to PCU, which is just one step above med surg and one step below ICU. And so we were there, still couldn't get under control. They were going to cardiovert me, which is a manual reset of your heart, essentially, to get it back into rhythm. And I was like, that's not going to happen. So, long story short, I ended up cardioverting myself. I don't need to go into the nitty gritty details of that, but you're able to do it with a couple of things. So I was able to go back into regular rhythm, but they still didn't know what was going on with me. I was still in so much pain, couldn't get comfortable, couldn't sleep. And, sleeping in a hospital is hard enough as it is, right? So fast forward, we're at July 2nd now. I've been 3 days in the hospital. And finally, I've had enough. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, I can't keep doing this. So on, I want to say it was July 3rd, the provider came in with his medical students, and I was like, oh, this will be good. And he sat on the edge of my bed and asked me what's going on. And I said, what do you mean what's going on? Like, my chart is full. You probably think I'm crazy. He goes, no, no, no. He's like, I've read the chart. I don't care what the chart says. He's like, I want to know what's going on. And so I pretty much just told him everything I told you. I just went through this huge account of like, this is what's going on. This is the time frame. This is everything that's happening to me. I think I'm going crazy. And he very nicely said, I don't think you're going crazy. He's like, but I want to ask you a question. He said, do you have any history of autoimmune diseases in your family? And I kind of sat there for a second and I was like, no. And he goes, well, what about diabetes? What about rheumatoid arthritis? What about macular degeneration, pernicious anemia? He's like, any of those sound familiar? And I was like, yeah, I guess I didn't dawn on me that that's autoimmune. And so he goes, well, give me a couple days. He's like, can you give me a couple days? And he's like, and I'm going to run some tests and I'm going to get an answer for you. I said, fine. So I spent 4th of July in the hospital. I was on I want to say, 5th or 6th floor of the hospital. So I got to see the fireworks. So that was pretty cool. But um, woke up on July 5th and he came back in my room with his med students and said, well, I have good news and bad news. And I said, okay. And he goes, what do you want first? I said, doesn't matter. He goes, well, good news is I know what's wrong with you. He goes, bad news is you have lupus. And I said, oh, okay. And I immediately just broke down in tears. I was happy that I wasn't crazy. I was like, I had a name for it. Like, that was great. And then also crying of like trying to have my nurse brain recall what the heck lupus was. And I was like, I remember there's like a weird rash you get on your face, but like that's all I could remember. And so he's like, I'm going to give you a dose of steroids. And he's like, and I will guarantee you will feel 100 times better. So he did. And I got up and walked around my hospital room and was like crying tears of joy that it didn't hurt to get up to go to the bathroom. It didn't hurt to bend over to put my shoes on. It was crazy. And so he was like, well, I'm going to keep you another day and then I'm going to send you home. He's like, this is, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's like, you're going to follow up with the rheumatologist and this is all this kind of stuff. They're going to get you on the right medications and this is going to be wonderful. So that did happen. I did get put on medication. I got sent home on a hefty dose of steroids. If you've never been on steroids before, they make you feel like you're on cloud nine, but you also don't sleep. And you either overeat or undereat. You start feeling like you're running on fumes because your body gives you this false sense of like feeling amazing, but with no rest. So I was sent home on 80 milligrams of prednisone, which is really high. And also started on a drug called hydroxychloroquine, which is an anti-malarial drug that is prescribed with lupus. That is the most common prescription. And with that, the steroids felt great, but like day 3, I got sent into this spiral of extreme pain. I felt like I had knives in my kneecaps, my head hurt, my chest hurt, everything again. And I was like, oh my God, this isn't it. This isn't what's going to fix it. On top of that, the hydroxychloroquine is a lovely stomach upset. So I felt like my intestines were being wrung out like a wet swim towel all the time for probably about 2 weeks straight. I was afraid to leave my house, was afraid to eat anything and then leave my house. As you can imagine, there was a lot of, yeah, it was bad. So there was that. And then on top of it, having lupus being an inflammatory disease, it is it can cause you to lose your hair. And being on a high dose of steroids can also cause you to lose your hair. And guess what? I lost my hair. And excuse me, there's another video on here about hair loss as my Flare Fact Friday post. And that goes over, there's pictures in there, and I tell my story with that. But as far as the story goes here, I didn't want to leave the house. My face got the moon face. It looked like I gained like 70 pounds in my face. And then I woke up one morning and I had lost 35 pounds overnight. I got out of bed and my sweats fell off. I couldn't hold them up. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I looked at my husband and I said, I think I'm dying. I think it's the wrong diagnosis. I don't know what's going on. And suddenly I hated the sun. The sun made me break out. It made me feel like I had a lobster sunburn from the inside out. The pain was getting better, but all of the other crap that came with it, like, it was horrible. And so after rearranging my schedule and doing all these crazy things, I couldn't stay in the hospital anymore. It physically was not fair to me. It was not fair to my patients, not fair to my coworkers. And so I ended up leaving. I became an infusion nurse. So this would have been in October of 2021. I went to another company and I loved it. I fell in love with infusion. I never saw myself as an outpatient nurse. And so to thrive in that environment and to do really well with that was huge for me. So I did really well there. That company just was no longer a fit for me. And so I was kind of looking for other work. And so I was looking for other infusion places. I was looking for different things. And then I would kind of stop and still continue to work. And this podcast showed up, excuse me, for nurse coaching. And with that, I decided to give it a shot. And I listened to the podcast and I was like, this sounds too good to be true. I don't like it. So went on my way. Interviewed for a couple jobs. I didn't find one that really sat well with me. So continued to work and do what I wanted to do. And again, this podcast showed up like 6 months later and was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go this time. And for whatever reason, this time I was listening to it and it really resonated with me differently. It like hit me differently. I heard it differently. I don't know what it was. I can't exactly tell you, but it felt right. And so I made a call, discovery call is what it was called, and tried to see about this program and see if it was a good fit for me and, all this kind of stuff. And I started crying on the call. It was the weirdest thing. And I said, you know, I've never thought about what I could do as a nurse coach. I never really like gave much thought to it when I got on this call. I just was like, I'm gonna call them and see what they say. And in doing that, I just said, I want to be the person that I didn't have. And so with that being said, I went through the program, continued to work. I ended up leaving the current job and went to a different infusion company and continued to finish my program. And so when I got done with my practicum and my contact hours and things like that, I realized that there's a market out there for people who want to redesign what their health looks like and wants to take back charge for that. And so I did all this and was like, okay, cool, I want to do this. I want to help everybody. And then I kind of hit a wall. I was like, I don't know what to do. So I got into a business course and my coach is amazing. And we were able to nail down like what really fuels me and where that is in my life. And for me, it was being a lupus coach. I was like, duh, it's just so easy. Like, why did I not see this? Because I didn't see myself as being somebody who could provide value to people. But when I was really thinking about it, I was like, I didn't have somebody that told me that this medication was going to hurt my stomach. I didn't have somebody tell me that my hair was going to fall out potentially. I didn't have somebody tell me that I was going to lose all this weight or gain all this weight or have crappy energy or, any of this. And of course you can get all this from Google and, WebMD and maybe your provider's office, but a lot of rheumatologists see you once and then see you 6 months later, sometimes 3 to 6 months later. And that's it. They're like, try the meds, hope they work. Cool. See you in 3 months. Like, that's not realistic. So, I wanted to be that person for people. I wanted to be that person that when you think of lupus and questions you have, you're like, I want to call her. I want to call that lupus coach. That's me. That's who I want to be. And so I'm working on this program and I'm so stoked about it. And I want to be able to share this with you. And I'm so happy that you're checking out my video. But the reason why I got here is because there's been nothing like this. I haven't run into anybody who's going to talk about dietary changes and exercise modifications. And sorry, the sun is like in my face. I shouldn't be complaining, but it's sunny out. But I want to be that person that is your go-to for that. I might not have all the answers. I might not be able to like spew all of these crazy scientific things at you, but what I can give you is I can give you real life things that work. And it's stress reduction, it's energy audits, it's exercises that are safe and effective for you. It's ways to help improve your sleep, improve hair loss. If you're having inflammation, foods to avoid, foods to eat, different things to do, And so that is why I made this. That is my story. And that is how I got here. And I hope that in hearing this and being on here as long as you have, hopefully you're able to hear my whole story. I hope it hits for you. I hope it's something that makes you want to check in with me. I would love to get to know you and I would absolutely love to welcome you into my community and be a part of something bigger, be a part of something that is going to change the narrative for you and maybe somebody you know. You might not have lupus, maybe your friend does, maybe a family member does. Maybe you just want to learn more about it to be in a community of information. I would love to support you in any capacity I can around lupus. And so with that being said, I am so excited to have you. I am so excited to be with you at this season of your life. And together we change the narrative, we redesign what your new normal looks like, and we say together, not today, Lupus. Thanks for tuning in.